But the future opportunity, of course, for bioplastics is fantastic if you look at where we are right now. Again, we have all these great applications, but still today, if you look at our addressable market, and for me an addressable market is with the technology we have today, with the properties we have today, what part of the plastics market out there could change tomorrow? And just look at your typical retailer, walk through the aisles, whatever plastic you see in your typical Walmart or your typical Kroger, I would say at least 75 to 80% we can change tomorrow. And right now, with the new capacity we have coming on stream, we will have 300 million pounds capacity, so that is less than 1%. If we get 10%, and again, we will have to have the environment in place, and we will have to have the economics in place. What would that mean? Well, it would mean NatureWorks, or if it's not just us, the biopolymer industry being $4 billion. What will be required is about $5 billion in capital in order to get to that $4 billion in revenue. Now, NatureWorks has two large parents. Cargill is one of them. Teijin, a Japanese chemical company, is the other. I do not know whether we actually will have to go out and raise capital to do this. But if you look at a $5 billion number over a, let's say, 10 to 15-year time period, that's a large amount of money. So please leave me your business cards that I know where to find you if that money will be required. Milestones. I was going to call it hurdles for further growth, but you always have to be positive in these meetings. So 3 real milestones. How do we get from 1% to 10%? Well, 3 things have to fall in place. Start with economics, technology is the second, and then issues management is the third. I showed you this sheet before, oil and PET pricing over the last 10 years. What I added now is our price in North America for Ingeo. With 300 million pounds capacity, we can serve the marketplace. And then if you look at PET pricing and compare that with our Ingeo pricing, you see, of course, 10 years ago, we were not competitive. Purely comparing cost, forget environment. Purely comparing cost, we were not competitive with PET. But now you start looking into 2005, 2006, and boy, PET was getting up there. Another thing you see from PET in North America is the wild fluctuations in price. I mean, you can see the peak for Katrina out there. I'm not saying we won't see price fluctuations, because we use corn as a feedstock, and everybody who follows the commodity market knows that corn, of course, is not always at the same price. But we have been able to keep our price levels a lot more constant over a longer period of time than PET. Now, of course, we also see the last 3 months. I think it's fair to say that, at least from what I've heard from colleagues, we've never seen a price drop for oil-based plastics like what we've seen over the last 3 months. If you look at polystyrene markets in North America in December, I think it's fair to say that clearly they almost disappeared. There was almost no trading going on in these products in December. The expectation is, and I think it was mentioned even this morning, that if the global economy gets out of recession, oil will be back up at $100 a barrel before we know it. And then there is this expectation of oil being $200 a barrel by 2030. Because again, if you look at supply and demand, on the supply side, we know that oil is becoming scarcer and scarcer, and the existing oil fields are generating less and less oil. On the demand side, if we don't do anything, US economy getting back on stream, Europe getting back on stream, India stronger, China stronger, the supply and demand will move oil back up to levels well over $100 a barrel. Green premium. Yes, we need green premium today. Yeah, because where plastic pricing is today, oil-based plastic pricing is today, we clearly cannot compete on cost. But in my 10-year business plan, our expectation for a green premium is 0. We want to compete on cost. We do not expect to get a green premium. So all these companies out there who claim like, just because we're green, again, we can get this factor 2, factor 3 premium, great if you're a niche player. We're not in business to be a niche player. We want to be large. We want to compete with plastics. Technical, because of time reasons, I won't go in too much detail. just want to say, of course, that over a 67-year time period, a wide variety of oil-based plastics appeared. And here's just strength versus heat resistance. Of course, you can have all kind of tables out there. Our first generation Ingeo clearly had limited technical capabilities. If you look at strength, if you look at heat resistance, it was clearly not as good as it could be. But now you start to see second generation Ingeo, start to see third generation Ingeo, start to see blends where they take polycarbonate, for example, and Ingeo and combine it in a product and make mobile phones. And the fourth generation is coming. And that ultimately will lead us from disposables to semi-durables, ultimately ending up in durables. And again, you already start to see those durables today, typically as blends. Down the road, they're going to be 100% Ingeo. Last point I want to address is issues management. I've been on the job for 6 months, and if you read the paperwork before actually becoming CEO, of course, I tried to read as much as possible as I could about what the company was doing. And you think, man, this is a fantastic story. With oil at $100 a barrel, from a cost point of view, you're looking great, and then you offer all these environmental benefits. And then you actually start working in NatureWorks, and you really get bombarded with a bunch of issues. And I just want to use one example because I think it came up already yesterday, is the whole food versus fuel debate. We are not biofuel, we're biopolymers. So you look at, as an example, corn in North America. If our plant runs at full capacity, 300 million pounds, we lose less than 0.2% of corn in North America. So even if we build 10 plants, 15 plants, our impact of using corn for biopolymers would absolutely be zero if you relate that to the price of corn. Now, that doesn't mean if you look 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when we have plants around the world, that we want to keep using products like corn. So ultimately, of course, there's going to be the cellulosic feedstock. At that point, not only are we free to use a very large variety of products out there, but also from a costing point of view, it clearly will start giving us advantages. We are not leading that technology. The biofuel industry is leading that technology. But we use the same type of fermentation. Therefore, whatever they develop, we will be able to access. But it's not food versus fuel, not only food versus fuel. And we're a small organization, we're about 200 people, and we really get a lot of questions around, and I just put a couple up here, recycling, genetically modified organisms, composting regulation, a whole world to itself. And being a small company, but really being the largest biopolymer company, we're really always in the midst of all these discussions with stakeholders. And whether it's the government, whether it's the NGOs, whether it's the retailer, whether it's the brand owner. Clearly, we as NatureWorks has to do a lot of that discussion, a lot of the communication. So in 15 years from now, if we're going to look back at this period, 2005 and maybe up to 2015, I think what we're going to look back to is a period where biopolymers really got out of the kind of interesting niche kind of development, a lot of interesting things, but way too expensive, into really a mode where you put the economies of scale in place, you put the, the general economics in place, for example, also on the recycling side, so that 10, 20 years from now, you're really going to start looking at biopolymers very much the same like you're looking at plastics today. Thank you for your attention.